My name is Beverly Dines, and I am the COO and Managing Director at Collaboraction. Collaboraction is a 28-year-old nonprofit multimedia company whose mission is to build knowledge, empathy, dialogue, and action around oppression and inequity through theater, film, radio, and more that leverages the power of storytelling and community to cultivate positive social change. Collaboration Radio is sponsored by the Joseph and Bessie Feinberg Foundation, and today's episode of Collaboration Radio is sponsored by AV Chicago, Chicago's leading provider of AV production and event management services, and the Ruth Page Center for the Arts, a world-class dance center offering classes and critically acclaimed performances. After our show today, if you feel impassioned and want to join the conversation, Collaboration Radio is made possible by donors and members like you. So email radio@collaboration.org, or you can head to our website at www.collaboration.org.com to learn more. There's a lot of really exciting things happening at Collaboration right now, especially this week. We have quite a jam-packed week coming up. Not only do we have this awesome episode of Collaboration Radio today, but then later on this week on Thursday, we have our groundbreaking ceremony. This is going to be a historic event where we are going to finally be kind of celebrating the breaking of ground at Kimball Arts Center, our soon-to-be new House of Belonging. And so we're really excited to kind of come together with so many key stakeholders and supporters to celebrate the occasion and really get to digging in on all things Build Out. For those who aren't aware, we'd originally kind of gotten settled and squared away to be in the Kimball Arts Center back in May of last year. And due to a variety of factors, including, just everybody trying to get a permit, right? If you know, I did not get to pick up our permit until Christmas Eve last year. So from May to Christmas Eve, we were finally, we were waiting, and now we are ready to go. And so we are targeting our opening to be sometime this summer. And this groundbreaking is a symbol of that new journey for us. Also next week is our Black History Month Poetry Slam. I am so excited for this. We are the Silver Room has graciously partnered with us, so we are going to be in their incredible space in Hyde Park to have phenomenal spoken word artists to come. That is going to be February 16th from 1 to 4 p.m. at the Silver Room. We've got these incredible spoken word artists who are going to come and compete, as well as some community members, and those community submissions are still open. So if you are a spoken word poet and you got some stuff to say, and I don't know about you, but not like there's been a lot going on in the country or the world right now. So I don't know if you'll have much material, but if you find it, definitely I would definitely hope you would consider submitting for that, because we also are welcoming in community submissions. And so that'll be February 16th as well. So a lot of really exciting things going on and even more to come. I did want to make space before we jump into the awesome episode we're going to have today to recognize that, especially in light of this episode, which is called The Future is Fluid, and we're going to dive into that in a little bit. I also want to give space to organizations that while we're able to celebrate this groundbreaking and our ability to be able to move forward and the stakeholders that are empowering us to be able to do so, there are many organizations right now that unfortunately are either struggling due to the current changes within our current administration, or unfortunately have become defunct because of the lack of funding. And so there's one particular group that I wanted to recognize, especially in light of this episode, called Trans Chicago. They are a trans, BIPOC-led trans advocacy group that unfortunately, due to the CDC cuts, have lost all funding. Their entire staff was laid off, and they are now all operating from a volunteer basis and actively seeking resources right now. And so this is an incredible organization that does a multitude of things, but one of the main things that really struck me about Trans Chicago is that they also have programs for walking you through the name change process. They will go step by step with you, help you find funding to be able to do that. If you're looking to do that, of course, they do HIV and AIDS awareness workshops, as well as just STI workshops to be able to better support your health and your journey. They also support with crowdfunding and support in that nature for your transition, if that is a part of your journey as well. And just also holding space because of the lack of the CDC support. They've also lost their location. And so now more than ever, we need to be supporting organizations that are continuing to charge on despite the adversity and are really providing life-changing, not just helpful, life-changing, life-saving support to the communities. And the entire team is still working. If you go on their Instagram, Trans Chicago or Trans Shai on Instagram, they are still posting daily of the programs and initiatives that they're doing, and it's all volunteer. So despite the fact that they have lost their financials, at least for right now, they're still out there on the ground working. So I implore you to please go and look up that group. Again, they're BIPOC-led. They're really doing really incredible work, including a vendor fair they have coming up, if it hasn't passed already, and a variety of other things just for togetherness, but as well as life-saving support. And so I just wanted to give space to them since they had made that announcement last week. If you are listening live, you can call in at 773-763-9278. And if you have any questions, or things you want to share as we get into the dialogue, please join us. It's one of my favorite things, seeing my little screen here light up and somebody on the dial trying to join the conversation, and get right into it. So on this episode of Collaboraction Radio, we are continuing to celebrate Black History Month. And like I've said in the previous episode, we celebrate Black History Month every month. However, we are being really specific about thinking through innovation as it relates to Black History Month. A joke I often say when it comes to education around this time is you've got these buckets, right? You've got, we're going all the way back to Soldier and Truth and her truth. And then you have, maybe a little bit more recent, we're celebrating Doechii, which, oh my gosh, who cried? When Doechii won that Grammy, I was like, that's more recent. And then also there's sometimes this bucket, the third bucket of more so the kind of acknowledgement of the continued oppression and things like that. And they all have their space. My focus for the last 2 episodes has been about future forward. How are we thinking ahead and how are we embracing each other as a community to think ahead? And so this episode is called The Future is Fluid. And I want to zero in on that a little bit before I introduce our incredible guests. What is fluidity? Well, Merriam-Webster, our good old dictionary, says that it's either A, the ability of a substance to flow easily, B, its smooth elegance or grace. Who doesn't want to be elegant? Who doesn't want to be graceful? And also it's the state of being unsettled or unstable, changeability, being able to change into different forms. If you sit for a moment and think about your own context, 9 times out of 10, you have been fluid in ways that you may not have even realized you've been fluid. Think about a job that wasn't serving you and it was in one field and now you're working in another. Partners that maybe you thought this was your type and now this is actually not your type. Style. Maybe you used to dress one way. I mean, I'm not ashamed to say it, but I used to wear gauchos and ponchos in the early 2000s and the nice page boy caps, but with a boot heel. There was a lot happening there. Sounds first to me. So, thank you. I was really going for my poncho chic, many different ponchos, but now I don't wear that. Fluidity is a part of the human experience. And the moment that we can begin to embrace that and celebrate it, because it means we're evolving, the moment that we can also bear empathy for people who are openly embracing that fact. And that's what this episode is about. The future is fluid, whether you realize it's happening or not. How many times, in maybe the last 5 years, have you heard a celebrity casually mention, in casuality, in total casuality, oh, they're bisexual, or that they're pansexual, or that they're ace, or that they're whatever the case. Or you have someone like a Billie Eilish who dresses somewhat some consider rather androgynously. She wears the oversized shirts. People, it's just part of her look. Then one day she wore a dress. Cool. Then she wore... The more and more we have been seeing, and it's always been a part of our history. Let's be very clear that androgyny is not new. If you're familiar with David Bowie, if you're familiar with the gentleman formerly known as Prince. If you're familiar with Michael Jackson, I mean, fluidity has been a part of our culture for history. And so now we're entering a time where it's almost should be expected. But how do you do that from a place of empathy? And how do you embrace that from a place of inclusion? And that's what we'll be discussing today. So if this concept is interesting to you, please, again, call us at 773-763-9278. I am very, very, very blessed and fortunate to have an incredible set of guests today. I'd like to formally introduce them, and then we'll jump right into it, starting with Mr. Wallace. Thank you for being here, Mr. Wallace. Mr. Wallace is a boundary-pushing DJ, rapper, and nightlife icon, ICON, known for electrifying performances and fearless artistry, blending hip-hop, house, and underground club sounds. They've carved out a distinct space in the music scene, championing queer expression and sonic innovation. When I first read that, by the way, usually I read the whole bio before I say anything, but when I first read sonic innovation, I had never heard of that before, and so I want to ask about that, because how are we innovating the way in which we ingest the music and the sounds that we surround ourselves with every day. So sonic innovation by founding collective and record label Futurehood. Now, if you've been following the last couple episodes of Collaboration Radio, Amir the DJ, who was on last week, who just dropped his album Laundry Day, is an artist under Futurehood. And so phenomenal work they're doing, and having shared stages with global superstars, including opening for Beyonce at her Renaissance World Tour, opening for Beyonce at her Renaissance World Tour. Mr. Wallace continues to captivate audiences with high energy sets that celebrate freedom, movement, and self-expression. Whether behind the decks or on the mic, their presence commands attention, creating unforgettable dance floor experiences. And beyond music, Mr. Wallace is a cultural force, shaping the future of nightlife and sound with every beat, and can be found monthly in Chicago at their residency at the legendary Arabella. Welcome, Mr. Wallace.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And that's not all. We are also in the studio with Shai, founding partner of For Them Presents, known for the Very That events and community initiatives. They're a creative agency and a production force focused on transforming the landscape of LGBTQ plus advocacy, culture, and community, with a commitment to highlighting beauty of intersectional identities, celebrating queer joy, and creating a space for dialogue. Shai brings a mix of insightful discussion and uplifting events to the Chicago nightlife. Whether tackling pressing social topics or showcasing queer artistry, their mission is to educate, empower, and inspire. Welcome, Shai.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And so as we think about the future of fluidity, I think before we can go there, it's important to kind of maybe start a little bit more recently in, obviously I've shared the definitions from Merriam-Webster, but who's she, right? I want to hear Shai and Mr. Wallace's definition of fluidity as it relates to artistry, community, connectivity, and identity. So maybe starting with Shai, how would you define embracing that?
Yeah, I think that fluidity, I think that we really, words mean things, right? And I think that people kind of fixate on the new age of how words evolve. And I think that fluidity has been this really interesting buzzword that people like to toss around. But for me, I think that where we are in the kind of the zeitgeist of culture is that people are craving dynamic experiences and dynamic conversations that make them retrospectively look within, but also kind of examine how we move forward. And so for me, being fluid, being a non-binary person as well, it really allows me to kind of expand freely through my exploration of self, through my exploration of community, through my exploration of my art and my creations, and how I engage with other people's art. Because, art is incredibly subjective. Community is incredibly is the inverse. You know, community is really a holistic approach that needs that needs empathy and compassion, right? And so how we pull through that is through a dynamic lens that is intersectional. And for me, fluidity is not just a binary, but it is an intersectional space of identities and community. And yeah, I'll pause for Wallace.
That was very intellectual.
Right. Strong start.
I define fluidity as more of it is a self-expression. What do I need to be in any given moment? / what do I want to be? And balancing those two. I think that we have a lot of expectations of people. We have preconceived ideas about people based on stereotypes, racism, gender ideas that are antiquated and rooted in white supremacy. And so learning and then unlearning that, right? And then understanding, okay, this is how I've been asked to show up in a space, but this is who I really am. And then understanding how to express that and communicate that to the world freely and confidently is where I identify fluidity.
And I think what you've both have emphasized is, and you said it very directly, Shai, about like these buzzwords, right? Like it is intersectional. And I think as a culture, we often struggle with the idea. I always say like two things can happen at once. Like there's truth and there's truth, and like they all can be true. And that's hard when the structures that be are like, no, like this is, well, that's just not how. If you go all the way back to indigenous culture, to Southeast Asian culture, like from the beginning of time, these concepts of intersectionality have always been present. And so I guess in thinking through that, as it relates to your work, maybe starting with Wallace on Futurehood, how does Futurehood embrace intersectionality by way of not only curating a platform for their artists, but in nurturing them to embrace what their intersectionality means if they themselves are on a path of self-discovery?
I am deeply invested in storytelling, and I encourage people to write their own stories versus letting the world write the story for you, or allowing those preconceived ideas about who you are to lead people when they experience you or come across your work. I would rather people tell their own stories and find ways to center themselves in their experience. And so Futurehood has always been about liberating artists to tell their stories, specifically Black, trans, and queer individuals who we often don't hear from. So just liberating people to tell their story in a way that is obviously creative, but also inspires the empathy and compassion that Shai was talking about, because then we get to build community by relating to one another, whether it's relating to someone's joy or to their pain or to their feelings of being misunderstood. And
it's there's a power in just creating the space to be able to even start thinking through that. And spaces like Futurehood, where I believe there was a coffee chat event that occurred where all of these artists were able to come together to not only network with other queer artists, but also kind of hear a talk back and dialogue and discourse about recent art. I know Emu the DJ was also doing interviews there as well. Have you found in your experience that there's been almost like a unpacking of sorts, like in your spaces when folks are coming in where they're like, oh, wow, I didn't even realize I felt this way as I've been writing my own work. I've been previously maybe performing other people's songs or, mixing over other people's beats? Or do you feel like folks are coming into their space, they're looking for you and they're like, I know what my story is, I just need a platform to tell it, or maybe a little bit of all of it? Is that intersectional, or you get a little bit of all of that?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. I do believe with some artists I have pushed a little bit more to move away from trying to create for the sake of getting views or create for the sake of being trendy, and really kind of push them into a place of storytelling and really becoming more intimate and more vulnerable. I think that especially with the world being run by idiots, and the things that they're saying about gender and things of that nature, it is so important for us to tell our truth and to tell our unique stories. And so I have had moments with artists where I've been like, I like what you're doing. This is cute. I see why you're doing this. But can we go a little bit further? Can we get a little bit more intimate? Can we be a little bit more vulnerable? Because that is going to be the work that really connects with people. And that's the work that's going to really make change and create that possibility of the future that we want. Yeah. So it's a bit of both. I am getting more and more artists that are clearer about their story or their vision. Shout out to Amir the DJ, because they came fully prepared to tell their story and to tell the story of Chicago nightlife. And I'm just very proud of them and their project Laundry Day. Yeah. Now streaming everywhere.
And it's good. It's good.
So good. It's so good.
And I think even to continue to evolve on that point of taking it a step further, it requires a level of vulnerability. And also a level of self-awareness too, of like, what is this is, if all you know is what you know, and what even is that, right? You're informed by your experiences, and that process, being able to even recognize your own blockades. It makes me think about when we had our pre-call, Shai, something you said that was so poignant was you intend to create spaces where people can begin the process of, quote, forgiving themselves for not being allowed to explore that intersectionality before, and then giving them the space in ways giving them space to explore their intersectionality in ways that they may not understand. And I think, an end quote, and I think the power in musical storytelling too is there are things, and if you've listened to a song that's really impacted you, right, and you start tearing up or you start feeling, there's times like, why am I even feeling this way? At least this happened to me, where I'm listening to a song like, why am I crying right now? But it moves you. And so in speaking to that vulnerability, Shai, and maybe if you can share with us, how has you being vulnerable in your expression amplified your ability to create and support others as they have done that exploration?
Yeah. So I think that at the root of the work that I do, and why I'm so passionately driven to do what I feel is my purpose-driven calling, right, is because I stand in two intersections, right? I stand in the intersection of being an Afro-Latino person who is non-binary and sits on the trans spectrum, but that does in a space of a lot of privilege, with a lot of access. And I have a lot of access academically. I had a lot of access growing up with a lot of resources to queerness. And at the root of the work that we do, with my largest party brand, Very That, we really focus on being a gateway. A gateway for people to, like I said yesterday, to explore parts of themselves that they may not understand, that they've never previously given themselves permission to explore. You walk into a Shai produced function, a For Them produced function, and even a Future Hood produced function, right? And you see versions of yourself that you've never seen before. You are exploring experiences that you may not have thought that this was accessible to you, that you may not have the understanding of what this is. And it is the first time that you'll see yourself doing this. And it's not the last time, right? It's that one, that key, that little piece of permission that you will forgive yourself for not, giving yourself that before, or really even knew that you had it in you. And just by giving people simple categories, simple instructions, it allows people to, day by day, step by step, explore themselves, evolve, become a more dynamic person, become a more compassionate, empathetic person. And my work started in a very dark, place of pain. And very that was born as a love letter from that pain. And so, yeah, that's...
I think what's so powerful about that too is, for those of you who are listening who may not be a part of the LGBTQI plus community or see yourself as fluid in any capacity, which you are, but in case you don't think you are, think about as it relates to religion. I grew up Roman Catholic, and there's a lot of motifs there. And I remember when I went to college, I went to a gay karaoke bar for the first time, MJ's on Jefferson, in Dayton. And I remember they had just been done with a drag show, and it was my first real exposure. At the time, I was rather sheltered, and I remember being in that space, and everyone was so welcoming and so inclusive and so supportive. I mean, pouring into and I think that's kind of going a step further. This is also my freshman year. I saw Rocky Horror Picture Show. My friends had invited me to it, and those who know me know this story really well. But again, I was very sheltered. I had no clue what the show was about at all. I thought it was a scary movie that was being adapted to a musical, and I was like, that's really cool. And so let me just set the scene.
Did they paint a V on your head?
Let me just set the scene for you, because it starts with the fit. It starts with the outfit. Yours truly was wearing a up the neck turtleneck corduroy skirt all the way down to my knees almost, with the boots matching, and I had a little headband on. I was not prepared. My friends came to get me, and they're looking cute with the leather and the fishnet. They're like, what's going on? I'm like, we're seeing a scary show, right? We get there, they say, are you a virgin? And I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? I was so offended. I was like, what? And my friend, Kristen, if you're listening, I love you. She was like, no, Beth, they have to do it because you haven't seen it before. And I'm like, no, you're not putting anything in my head. And this woman was was running around. I get into the space, and it was quite literally the first time in my entire life that I had seen male presenting folks in skirts and in bustiers and in makeup, and then wearing heels, and then female presenting of folks in all these different attires. And I'm looking around it was a culture shock, right? And needless to say, the show gets starting. It's not about a scary movie, by the way. And so, my friend who was playing Frankenfurter came out, and it was a lot to process at once. And I remember going back home to my dorm, and it calls back to something you both said about, kind of self-exploration. I've always been a writer. I've always written, lyrics. And I went home, and I was trying to process through what I was feeling, because I was feeling so many conflicting things. And I realized that space that I was in was one of probably, if not one of the more inclusive spaces I've ever felt up until that point in my life. Everyone was checking in to make sure that I felt okay, that I felt safe. One person came up and they're like, girl, you all right? You look stressed. And I was like, this is not about scary movies. So let's get you somewhere. So very thoughtful. And the creation of that space enabled a level of vulnerability for me that, as I've navigated my journey, kind of started to be able to ask myself questions, because up until that point, there's a certain mentality, there's a certain ideology that's fed to you. And it takes safe spaces to be able to start the questioning, like you shared. And that's just one experience of mine where that was the start. And then by the end, it never ends, but being more comfortable with acknowledging maybe what I've been educated about in this particular concept isn't the only way. And also, I feel really safe here so it can't be bad. And I think zeroing in on that piece, I would love to talk about Cruise, Chicago, and it's an incredible group that they do these really cool cycle tours where you can bike with, and we love a bike culture in Chicago. So if you haven't heard of Cruise Chicago, like, I was looking through the page yesterday.
Fall in.
Please, like, I can't wait for it to get warm because I love to bike. But beyond that, though, you're coming together in community and you're biking, and there's a development aspect of it, and there's a vulnerability and an intentionality around the community that's built at the end of the trail. And so, Shai, could you share with us what drew you to partnering with the grander org, because it's a national organization, but more than that, spearheading these initiatives to bring folks together as another safe space through activity?
Yeah, so shout out to Alton Dion. He is the co-founder of Cruise, the Cruise Community Network. Alton and I founded the Cruise Community Network 3 years ago now, right in Berlin nightclub. May she rest in peace. Just on a quick whim of, hey, do you want to go on a bike ride? And realizing that it is very simple to get a bunch of people to get on a bike ride, because people like being outside and being warm. But really deeper into that, we wanted to create something that was outside of nightlife. A lot of the representation of queer community and the spaces that queer people seem to kind of be pushed to form relationships, to find their chosen family, is either in a trauma-driven space or or in the nightclub, in the bar, around alcohol, around drugs, And so we wanted to create a sober environment, a sober space that people could, tangibly touch resources, tangibly touch exercise, mental health services, access to HIV care. And so a couple years ago, we started with a small, what we thought was a 15-person bike ride that grew to, organizing a $60,000 fundraiser for TPAN and Vivint Health, to, active membership of, 300 plus riders weekly, expanding to Detroit and looking at other cities to expand further to. And so, yeah, I'm really, Cruise is really it is the magnum opus, I would say, of the work that Alton and I would do, because it is the most rewarding thing that I can remember from that first year. Wallace DJ'd our closing party, and someone walked up to us, and he was the right therapist, and they said, hey, to both of you, I'm really proud of you two Black people who are leading this very large organization from its infancy. But my client, who I see every week, they're still alive because they come in every week to ride this bike ride.
Wow.
The one time they see people a week, the life-saving work, the mission-critical work to what Cruise is not just connecting people, to have a drink or to ride a bike, but it's connecting people to a lifeline, to getting people to feel seen, to be heard, to a chosen family. And so that's something I'm so proud of. And yeah, plug into Cruise. You can follow us on Instagram at Cruise Chicago, Cruise Detroit, and the Cruise Community Network.
Can you please share a little bit more on some of the intentional work that Cruise does beyond just the biking, for those who might be listening and go on their Instagram, hearing you share that it's creating such a space of inclusion and togetherness that it is truly life-saving. I'd love for you to expound just a little bit more on some of the initiatives beyond that you all are doing.
Yeah, so biking is hard, especially in Chicago, but it is an incredible. Chicago is one of the largest bike safe cities in the nation. And I'm pretty sure it has the most bike lanes per capita in the U.S. And so it is an active means of transportation. And so we partner with, 2 years ago, we partnered with Lyft and Divvy to make, biking a little bit more accessible. Bikes are really expensive. Getting around the city is really, really expensive. It shouldn't have to cost you $100 a month to get you from point A to point B. And so accessibility is incredibly important and mission critical to the work that we do, right? But it's not just accessibility to our ridership, it's accessibility to resources. We partnered with TPAN and Vivint Health, which are incredible organizations for HIV care, for therapy care, for housing, and pairing people to those resources and highlighting the community resources that are often underrepresented, under-resourced, under-highlighted. And so we try to bring those partners that are really intentionally curated. We really, really think about who we're connecting with, who we're talking to, who we bring in, who we partner with, so that those organizations are not only highlighted, right, but they really feed to the core of who we are and who we think our community is.
Thank you. No, please look up the as Shai mentioned, there's Chicago, there's Detroit, and this station has a far reach. So if you're listening, please look into, because it's going to get warm soon, and you can hear even then the interconnection. And that's really what Collaboration is about as well. Is like, how do we connect groups? Like Cruise is very clearly aligned with that mission too, connecting people so that you may especially bring a friend too who may not know, because they might go to thinking it's a bike ride and then leave with tons of resources they didn't even realize.
Not only that, but like tons of friends.
And
friends. I have
and
way
friends.
too many friends. Every day we go on every ride, and Alton, our fearless leader, they start every ride with, who's new. And I'm surprised every time that there is 10, 20, 30 people joining on this bike ride. And it is, 60 people on the middle of any street is a lot. When we move to hundreds, it's crazy. But it's beautiful to see a trans-led group, a Black-led group, a Latin-led group, really being incredibly visible through the streets of Chicago, taking up space, saying that this space is ours, and it's not ever going to not be.
Yeah.
And so, that's our footprint.
Please look them up. And I think, about taking space, and I'm like really trying hard not to do the like wicked meme, like they really hold space with that, if you haven't seen that already. But in looking to the future, Wallace, I'd love to ask you, based off of, you heard the bio, from Beyonce to their own work. I can't say the name of their album's title on air, but it is really good. I was listening to it last night. I can't say it, but it's really, really good. Please look that up. And all of this breadth of work, and also pioneering this truly innovative record label, and really it's more than a record label, it's really a community that you're creating. I think, again, it's like it's more than that, it's a curation of artists. As you look to the future though, based off of all of your experience, what do you see as the next frontier for music and expression as it relates to empowering queer artists to step forward in their storytelling? What are the trends that you foresee or forecast based off of your work from previous to now and looking ahead as you pioneer?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was very excited by the Grammys, and in particularly Doechii winning the best rap album category. As you mentioned earlier, we have a lot of artists these days that are casually mentioning their queerness, and she has been one of them. She's gonna have a song about finding out that her partner was down low. And I just think that's so funny because, I mean, as you noted, Futurehood, and as I said earlier, I've been encouraging people to tell their very vulnerable, intimate stories. And she went and did that, and it got her a Grammy. So I think it is a formula. I think it is the pathway to the future is through truth, and it is through fully embracing yourself and expressing your joy, but also your pain and what you struggle with. Alligator Bites Never Heals, shout out to Doechii, is a great album because she talks about it's a great mixtape because she talks about all these different moods and vulnerabilities. She gets, braggadocious, but she can also be vulnerable and a little bit more melancholy. And I think that earnest honestness was really needed and connected with a lot of people this past year, and that's why she got that Grammy. So in the future, I see those type of stories and that vulnerability being what leads people to really greatness. Kendrick said, "Watch the party die," and I love nightlife. I'm a DJ. There is a space for having a good time and joy, but joy, we don't know the heights of joy without knowing the depths of pain, and really being able to express the fullness of who we are is what the future is going to be about. So I do think that that is a trend that we'll see continue.
Yeah. And it's dismantled. Oh, sorry. I'll let you go.
I'm sorry to. This kind of reminds me of to amplify Wallace's point. In our call yesterday, I talked about the recipe of how we curate events, and Wallace kind of hit the nail just now. We want to create immersive experiences that allow people to really feel an energy, an experience, a wave of emotions, explore that truth, right? But we also want to put them through a sonic storyline, a storyline of, walking in from getting out of the Uber to walking in, to hearing that first, "It's time to dance" by Mr. Wallace streaming everywhere, to how they feel putting in their coat check, disrobing, twirling around about, and building connection and community, right? To, what they're left with afterwards, and being mindful of what you leave people with, and what they're left with, nightlife is evolving. Nightlife will always evolve. There is a new age of producers, myself included, Wallace included, right? They're the producers of before, we are rising up now and taking their spaces. And this next gen and this next class of people, I'm really proud to say, are really focused on how we leave spaces for other people, how we leave, how every piece of the guest experience, every piece of the community experience builds upon each other, and how that really it is not only just a sonic story, an experiential story, but it's now their story. And something that someone told me, when we built Cruise, when we built Very That, is once you give something to the community, it's no longer yours; it's theirs.
It's gosh, to both of your points, it isn't just in music either. It's the rise, and so I talked about this in the last episode. The part of my master's thesis, I did one of them. I did on social media literacy in the digital age, and so the next era of influencers and content creators and stars, frankly, there's always going to be a nepo in there, but the next era isn't going to be somebody who started in the industry at 7 and worked their way all the way up, and now they're a big Hollywood blockbuster star. It's going to be like Tabitha. It's going to be like you. It's going to be like me. It's going to be people who are authentically sharing their stories and through that and their vulnerabilities, and through that, in their artistry, people connect with them, create community around them. I'm even hearing people start to not refer to the folks who kind of subscribe to their socials anymore as followers. They're starting to. I've seen more and more people. Thank you so much to my community. Thank you so much to people who are a part of my network. I've heard too, and so it's translating. Both Shai and Mr. Wallace are on point that like it's translating across the generations that are emerging, that this concept of inauthenticity is tired. And people are tired of being sold in inauthenticity. They're tired of people, we can always tell when there's a PR response happening, when there's like, somebody really wants to say what they want to say and then they don't. And I think what's so refreshing about artists like Chappell Roan is she's been really disruptive. Her Grammy speech was incredibly on point. It was respectful, it was real, and it was a powerful use of her platform. And yet, here comes this discourse from a particular generation about, respectability politics. We're done. And a lot of the community is saying that we're done. People want to feel authentically with others and validate. And a good example of this too, and just the day-to-day, is I had an interaction at the bank earlier this week doing some work for Collab, and it meant incredible. Our person supporting us was an incredible person. And we were just chatting, and my co-leader leaves, Anthony leaves, and I'm sitting there, we're wrapping up, and I could tell that their spirit was heavy. And I sat there a little bit, they were finishing up, and I just said, like, are you okay? Like, are you all right? And the flood, like, really, they just started expounding, and then apologizing right for it, right? Because we're taught to not be vulnerable. We're taught that it's a bad thing to be vulnerable with your friend. Did you overshare? Oh, that's uncomfortable. Did you say you loved your friend? Don't say that. That's weird. And I said, don't apologize. And we talked, we were there for an hour. I was a little late to our meeting, but I was like, no, I want to give you this space. And we were chatting back and forth. And then I was sharing. And the next thing I knew, they were helping me. And we're helping each other. We're sitting in this bank. I kept looking around the lobby like, we're really talking about stuff. I'm giving them resources to folks. They were talking to me, but it was so needed. And I said, I think everybody needs this. And he was like, oh my God, like, yes, like it feels nice to artists who are being authentic about the realities within which they exist. Are the frontier, and you've heard it here from those on not only on the ground but are innovating. Because if you've taken anything away from the dialogue, you're really innovating the way we think about community engagement. It's not a pizza party at the office. It's not just a kickback. It's being really intentional about that space and time that we have together. And like you said, curating dialogue around real things. And it doesn't always have to be, I like that you mentioned, Wallace, that it doesn't always have to, that there's joy, but you have to also understand the sorrows. It also doesn't have to always be sad either. Like, you can be authentic about the great day you have, but when was the last time, for those of you listening, that you celebrated your wins with your friends? When was the last time you were like, hey, you know what, guys, I had a really great day at work today? Or, hey guys, I discovered this new thing about me. I wrote this new thing that feels, really great to me. And equally, when was the last time you told someone that you were really struggling? How many times a day does someone say, how are you? And you're like, I'm good, when you're absolutely not. And my ask of those who are listening are to immediately follow Futurehood, follow Very That, follow Cruz, follow Shai, follow Mr. Wallace, follow their artists, follow their network, follow me if you don't already, please. Do that. But then also, if you see yourself falling into that space where you're like, I just want to feel grounded in myself and validate my experience, there are people out here waiting for you. They're waiting for you. They're already here and they're waiting for you. I deeply encourage you to find these spaces, especially now. I was sharing before the episode that, scrolling through TikTok, scrolling through Instagram, I mean, it is heavy, the time we're in right now. And at the same time, it is what everyone always says, right? Diamond is created through the pressure of the coal, right? Mm-hmm. But also during the time of, I said this last episode, during the time of the Great Depression, the rise of what we now know as the entertainment industry skyrocketed because people were seeking something that reflected the experience that they were having. And I want to empower you that you may also be the person who can story tell the experience that somebody else is having. I think there's this kind of philosophy of, there's artists and then there's everyone else. It's like, no, we're all artists. We're all storytellers. And you don't know that your story, by sharing it, by not maybe saying, I'm good today when you're really not. You don't know if by being vulnerable, like that person I met at the bank, like I needed that, something serious. It was like 9 in the morning on Thursday, but I needed it. And so did they. You don't know who you could be impacting. And like Shai said, life-saving. That one interaction to you might be like, I might have overshared. And to them might be like, you know what, actually, I'm not alone in this. And so one of the things to kind of round us on is this idea of it's giving. Shai and I had a call yesterday. We were talking, well, both of us had, and the philosophy for very that. What is it giving? What is it giving?
What's it giving?
What's it giving? I would love to hear from you, Shai, and also Wallace. What is 2025 giving for you? Not what they're telling us it's giving. What is it giving for you both in your work as you move forward to empower your community?
You want me to go first?
No, you go first. She said you first.
You want me to go first?
She said you first.
Listen. Full stop. 2025 is giving, period. It's giving power.
Yes.
It's giving reclamation. It's giving taking up space. It's giving a renewed focus. 2025 is giving self-assuredness despite the loud darkness around the world. I've never felt more aware of the power that comes with the identities that I hold, the power that comes with the story and the life that I've lived, and how much strength that resilience and that level of existence, the power that holds and the privilege that is, and how much I'm willing to share that and how much I want to share that with the world. So literally, what's it giving? It's giving. It's giving it all. It's giving connection. It's giving spirit. It's giving compassion. But it's also, it's giving healing. It's giving space for yourself. It's giving, it's okay to not be okay. It's all of those things. It's really giving limitless, and that's my theme for this year.
It's giving limitless.
Yeah, 2025 is giving joy as a form of resistance.
Period.
Can you say that one more time?
2025 is giving joy as a form of resistance. I feel that there was a collective disappointment around the election results and a lot of anxiety before the Cheeto took office, and obviously a lot more now that Elon is passing out Social Security numbers. So, you want to get bogged down in the, oh my God, what is happening? The world is burning. And it makes you feel sad. It makes you want to say, oh, I'm fine, or kind of check out, as you were saying. And that's not gonna get us anywhere. And ignoring the problem is not useful. But then also getting bogged down and stressed out and distracted is also not useful. So it's giving joy. It's giving go out and have a good time, get dressed up, make plans, protest. Joy as a form of resistance. Yes. 2025. I'm gonna have a good year. I don't care what they're doing.
Yes.
I'm booked. I'm blessed. Beyonce is on tour. Period. Like, I'm black, girl. Like, the future is bright and black, honey. Yes. So, yes, 25 is giving joy down.
Yes. Ugh. 2025 is giving limitless. It's giving joy as an act of resistance. And I'm going to pull off of what you said, Shai, about 2025 is giving found families. I think something that I've noticed in because of our current political situation, people recognizing that who may not even be familiar with the term found family are realizing, oh, people who are related to me, or people who I am married to, or people who I have associated myself with, do not believe that I should have the rights I should have, or do not understand kind of the difference between politics and ethics. And I've started to see more discourse about people seeking that, whether that be on Blue Sky, whether that be on Instagram or anywhere else. And 2025 to me is about finding your family, whether that's at a cruise event, whether that's at a Mister Wallace spinning at their events, or maybe becoming an artist at Futurehood or pitching. It's coming to Collaboration, to our events, and finding people who are going to embrace you and celebrate you as you embrace the intersectionality of your experience. To me, that is what it's giving, and to me, this episode is giving everything. I am so grateful that you are both gave time and space to be here. And please, if you get anything from it, give them a follow, because it's giving community. Are we closed out? Are we good? We're done. Thank you.
The preceding program, Collaboration Radio, was sponsored by Collaboration, and to the extent applicable, their guests. The views and opinions expressed therein do not necessarily reflect those